Have you ever stopped to think about the way you are relating to the earth? In South Africa, where nature is so wild and vibrant, the ancient wisdom of the Stoics can show us how to live in harmony with everything around us. But what happens in our minds when we ignore the balance of nature? What happens when we forget our true connection to the earth? In this video, we will explore how the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus help us understand that we are not separate from the natural world, but rather we are an extension of it. And most importantly, how these Stoic lessons can help us live more fully, more consciously, more connected to the planet we call home. If you've ever wondered about the impact your actions have on the world and want to discover how small changes can generate big transformations, stay with us until the end. Sign up now because you won't want to miss out on lessons that can change not only your life, but also the way you see the world around you. Let's walk the path together to live in accordance with nature and awaken a deep connection with the earth. Lesson 1. Stoic wisdom in observing nature. Stoic wisdom has always been closely linked to the observation of nature, not just as a metaphor, but as a practical guide for living in a balanced way and in harmony with the world. Stoic philosophers believed that by observing the natural flow of life and the processes happening around us, we can learn valuable lessons about how to live with more wisdom, tranquility, and self-mastery. In South Africa, with its vast biodiversity and impressive landscapes, this connection with nature becomes even richer, offering a unique opportunity to integrate these Stoic teachings into our daily lives. When looking at the mountains, rivers, and deserts of South Africa, we can see the simplicity and perfection of natural cycles. The seasons, the movement of water, and the growth of plants show us how nature follows its course without resistance, without rushing, but always fulfilling its function. Just like nature, the Stoics teach us to accept what we cannot control and to embrace the impermanence of things. What is in our power is our response to these natural cycles. Nature does not rush, but everything happens at the right time, without forcing, without fighting against the flow of the world. This is a valuable lesson that we can apply to our own rhythm of life. In a world where rush and competition are a constant, observing nature teaches us to slow down, be more present, and trust the right time for things to happen. Another essential point of Stoic philosophy is the understanding that all beings, human or not, are part of a great whole, a universal order that is beyond our understanding. When we observe an elephant on the savannah or birds flying along the coast, we can see a reflection of the harmony that the Stoics valued so much. Each creature, each plant, fulfills its role in the great cycle of life. In the same way, we are called to play our role without being burdened with the desire to control everything around us. True wisdom lies in understanding our nature and our place in the world, respecting the role given to us without fighting against what we cannot change. Stoic philosophy also teaches us to cultivate gratitude. As we look at the mountains that rise majestically before us, the sea that stretches to the horizon, and the vegetation that blooms with the passing of the seasons, we are reminded that all of this exists independently of our actions. However, we are fortunate to be able to experience and learn from this beauty. Gratitude, then, is not just a response to what we receive, but a way of realizing that everything nature offers us is a gift that must be appreciated and respected. In Stoic practice, this helps us cultivate a sense of contentment, freeing us from the endless quest for more and more and connecting with what we already have. Finally, observing nature is a form of meditation in itself. When we allow ourselves to spend time amid the tranquility of South African nature, we can experience the peace that comes from fully accepting the present. The gentle sound of the wind in the trees, the singing of birds, or the flow of water, invite us to silence our mind and connect with the current moment. In this state of presence, we learn to look inside ourselves, to question our reactions, and to cultivate a state of emotional balance, which is the true basis of Stoicism. In short, living according to Stoic wisdom when observing nature is an invitation to find peace in the simple, to accept what we cannot control, and to embrace the impermanence of life. Nature, with its beauty and wisdom, becomes a mirror where we can learn more about ourselves, about how to live with more purpose, gratitude and serenity. In the vastness of South Africa, with its awe-inspiring landscapes and unique diversity, we have a unique chance to apply these teachings, connecting deeply with the world around us and living in a way more aligned with universal wisdom. Second, harmony between man and earth, a Stoic principle. Harmony between man and earth is a principle deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy, which sees the universe as an interconnected system governed by reason and natural order. For Stoics, living in accordance with nature is essential to achieving tranquility and inner peace. They believed that the human being is not an isolated entity, but a part of a greater whole, a microcosm within the macrocosm of nature. This vision of unity teaches us that our actions must be guided by the understanding that we are responsible not only for ourselves, but also for the balance of the environment that surrounds us. When it comes to the earth, this involves recognizing that nature is our ally and that we must treat it with respect and responsibility. In South Africa, a country rich in ecological diversity, this connection becomes even more evident. The immense Karoo Desert, the tropical forests of the coast, and the imposing mountains of the Cape region are just a few examples of the natural grandeur that deserves our attention and care. The harmony between man and the earth, as the Stoics defend, teaches us that we must respect these ecosystems, as they are not just resources to be explored, but essential components of a vital network that sustains us. This idea of harmony reminds us that, just as nature follows its course with cycles and rhythms, human beings must also find their place within this order. The Stoics believed that by connecting with nature, by observing the patterns that govern the growth of plants, the flow of rivers, and the migration of animals, we can learn to adapt our own actions to universal harmony. It is through this adaptation that we can achieve a more balanced life, where human effort is not an act of domination, but of collaboration with the world around us. In practice, this means living sustainably, always seeking balance in our daily choices. Instead of treating nature as something to be conquered, we should see it as a source of learning and reflection. In the context of South Africa, this could mean preserving the vast areas of savanna that support unique biodiversity, or protecting the waters of rivers that irrigate fertile land and support wildlife. The act of living in harmony with the earth is not just a matter of preserving the physical environment, but of understanding our emotional and spiritual connection to it. This leads us to a more conscious life, where our actions are aligned with the natural rhythms and well-being of all life forms around us. Just as the Stoics teach us to control our reactions to what is beyond our control, harmony with nature teaches us to accept that not everything can be mastered, but rather lived wisely. In South Africa, where environmental challenges are a constant reality, learning from nature and respecting its cycles could be the key to facing drought, fires, and climate change. The Stoics encourage us not to fight the natural flow of things, but to find ways to live in balance with it, accepting its strengths and adapting to them. Therefore, living in accordance with nature, according to Stoic philosophy, is much more than simply seeking a more ecological lifestyle. This is a profound change in the way we see the world and our role in it. It is understanding that we are part of something bigger and that our actions have a direct impact on the balance of this system. By living with this awareness, We can, as the Stoics suggest, cultivate a life of tranquility, wisdom, and respect, aligned with the immutable laws of nature and the vast and magnificent world around us. Third, acceptance of what we cannot control. Lessons from natural cycles. Acceptance of what we cannot control is one of the most powerful lessons we can learn from Stoic philosophy. For Stoics, the universe is governed by a higher reason, something beyond our understanding, and many things in our lives are beyond our control. This concept is deeply reflected in natural cycles, which happen independently of our will. Seasons change, tides rise and fall, and animals follow their instincts. When we are faced with this reality, we realize that there is much that we cannot change, but our reaction to these events is completely within our control. In South Africa, natural cycles manifest themselves in powerful and distinct ways. The drought that affects certain regions, the forest fires that alter entire ecosystems, the migration of animals in the vast savannahs, and the rhythm of rain are clear examples of the relentless force of nature. These phenomena do not distinguish between people or groups. They simply happen according to the Earth's cycles, and trying to control these events is a futile effort. Stoic wisdom teaches us to differentiate between what we can control and what is beyond us. The wind that blows strong, the rain that doesn't arrive when we need it, or the drought that we can't avoid. These are forces that we cannot control. However, the Stoics remind us that what we can control is our attitude towards these challenges. Instead of worrying or fighting against what we cannot change, we must learn to accept and react with serenity. When we observe the nature around us, we can better understand this lesson. The sun doesn't care about the difficulty of plants trying to grow in arid soil, just as rain doesn't choose who should be wet. Nature follows its course, without rushing to please anyone. So, in our lives, accepting the uncontrollable gives us the peace we need to find balance. When a storm comes, there is no point in shouting or resisting. The best thing to do is seek shelter and wait for the storm to pass, knowing that it is part of the natural cycle. Likewise, in our personal lives, difficulties, unforeseen events and setbacks are inevitable. True wisdom lies in recognizing that the storm will pass, and that our well-being depends on how we choose to navigate it. This practice of acceptance does not mean resignation, but rather an active attitude of understanding that there are times when resistance is futile. In times of crisis, such as a prolonged drought affecting communities, we can feel powerless in the face of adversity. However, instead of wasting our energy fighting what is inevitable, we can seek solutions that are within our control, such as preserving resources and adapting to new conditions. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can change and to be resilient in the face of difficulties. Nature, with its unchanging cycles, is a perfect mirror for human life. Sometimes it's spring and everything around us seems to bloom with opportunity. Other times we experience autumn, a time of decline and reflection. Winter may bring periods of inactivity, but winter is when preparation for renovation takes place. And like in nature, these cycles help us understand that nothing is permanent, that difficulties are just temporary phases. Accepting what we cannot control teaches us to respect the natural rhythm of life, allowing us to live with more harmony and serenity. When we learn to accept the natural cycles of life, we can also apply this wisdom to deal with the challenges of our daily lives. This does not mean that we must settle for injustice or pain, but rather that we must learn to choose our battles wisely. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Accept things as they are, without revolting against them." It is an invitation to act clearly, even in the face of adversity. So as we observe the rhythms of nature, we can remind ourselves that no matter how challenging life's storms may be, they are part of something bigger, something beyond our control. By accepting this, we find a deep inner peace, capable of helping us navigate the turbulent waters of life with more calm, awareness, and self-understanding. Fourth, silence and meditation in nature. Silence has the power to reveal what our minds often ignore. When we step away from the constant noise of the modern world, whether in the frenetic daily life of the city or the constant search for distractions, we find ourselves faced with a rare opportunity, hearing the true voice of nature. This is where the wisdom of the Stoics resides, who teach us that silence is not just the absence of sound, but a deep space for reflection and self-knowledge. When we connect with the natural world, whether in South Africa's towering mountains or the country's tranquil beaches, we find an environment that invites us to slow down, to observe, to simply be. Meditation in nature, inspired by Stoic principles, offers a unique opportunity to immerse yourself in the present. As we walk along a forest trail or watch the waves crash against the shore, we are reminded that true inner peace does not come from racing thoughts or the desire to control everything around us. What the Stoics propose is that we seek stillness within ourselves, allowing the external world, with all its beauty and chaos, to teach us to accept what is, without resistance. This process of introspection, when practiced in harmony with nature, leads us to a deeper understanding of our own existence. The trees, the mountains, the rivers, and even the wind offer us a silent lesson. Everything is in constant flux, nothing is permanent, and yet life goes on. Each breath, each step taken amidst the natural immensity becomes a meditation in itself. In this silence, we are not only listening to the sound of nature, but also hearing the echo of our own thoughts, allowing us to reflect on our lives, our challenges and our choices with more clarity. Nature teaches us to live in the present, and the Stoics reinforce this in their philosophies. By meditating in a natural environment, we learn the importance of living fully in the moment, without obsessing about the future or regretting the past. When we look at the horizon, we observe the cycle of life without rushing, understanding that there is wisdom in the pause. The serenity of the natural environment teaches us that inner peace is not something we seek outside, but is cultivated within us. This simple and powerful practice of sitting silently in nature allows us to reconnect with the essence of what it means to be human, accepting the impermanence of life and learning to deal with it with courage, grace, and resilience. In a world where the pressure to always be busy or on the lookout for the next appointment is intense, Stoic teachings on silence and meditation invite us to slow down. In the tranquility of nature, we can cultivate patience and self-understanding, taking the principles of Stoic philosophy into daily practice. Every moment spent in silence amidst the natural vastness is an opportunity to return to our center, restoring our internal balance and reminding us that, just like nature, we are part of something bigger, something that needs to be respected and cared for. By incorporating these moments of silence into our routine, we can create a sacred space of connection, not only with the earth, but also with ourselves, preparing us to face the world with a clearer mind and a calmer heart. Fifth, practice of detachment. How nature teaches us to let go of the superfluous. The practice of detachment is one of the central pillars of Stoicism, and nature, in its simplicity and unchanging cycles, offers us a powerful lesson on how to live lighter and without excess. The Stoics teach us that attachment to what is material, ephemeral, or unnecessary distances us from true happiness. We live in a society where the accumulation of goods and the constant search for more consume our time and energy. But nature shows us in a silent way the value of letting go of what is not essential for our inner peace. Yes, in a silent way, the value of letting go of what is not essential for our inner peace. Observing the cycle of nature, we can see how each season brings changes that are natural and necessary for balance. Leaves fall on trees, and the earth absorbs these leaves, recycling them to nourish what comes next. There is no resistance, there is no fight. Nature effortlessly lets go, and this process teaches us that letting go is not about losing something, but about releasing what has already served its purpose, allowing space for the new. This deep understanding invites us to reflect on what, in our own lives, is just taking up space, whether physical or emotional. In South Africa, with its vast diversity of ecosystems, we have the chance to observe detachment in many forms. The plants that adapt to the arid climate, the animals that migrate according to the seasons, all in constant movement, accepting transience. What seemed permanent, like the rivers that flow into the sea, is actually part of an eternal cycle of transformation. If we pay attention to this, we can learn to let go of what no longer serves us, be it a material object, a worn-out relationship, or a thought that no longer brings us peace. True freedom lies in understanding that nothing is truly ours forever. Nature, with its fluidity, teaches us not to get attached to what is fleeting. This practice of detachment can be incorporated simply into everyday life. By connecting with our surroundings, we can apply Stoic philosophy in a practical way. Walking a trail in the mountains or observing animals in their natural habitat can help us reflect on the importance of living with less. By letting go of excesses, whether in material possessions or unnecessary worries, we find a wider space for inner peace. Detachment, in fact, brings us closer to a life richer in genuine experiences, more focused on what really matters, and frees us from the constraints of constant consumption. Thus, by looking at nature and its teachings, we can understand that detachment is not an act of loss, but of gain. It allows us to create a space for the essential, for what really brings us joy, growth, and harmony. Like the Stoics, we can learn to live according to the natural flow of life, without fighting the inevitable, and thus cultivate true freedom, which lies in being sufficient with what we have and with what we are. By letting go of the superfluous, we move closer to a life more aligned with what is truly lasting and meaningful. Sixth, gratitude for natural beauty, a Stoic perspective on the world. Stoic philosophy teaches us that gratitude is an essential practice for living wisely and harmoniously. However, the Stoics did not see gratitude as a fleeting emotion, but as a transformative force that can help us find balance, even in the face of adversity. In South Africa, the natural beauty is vast and diverse, from towering mountains to tranquil beaches and lush wildlife. Each of these wonders is an invitation to deep reflection on the interconnectedness of all things and the role we play in the great cycle of life. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, constantly reminds us that nature is governed by a greater order, a universal reason that surrounds and guides us. He teaches us to look at the world with a view of acceptance and respect, recognizing that the beauty of nature is not something we should take for granted, but rather something we should celebrate. Stoic gratitude is the ability to see the grandeur in the simple, to realize that nature, with its chaotic perfection, offers us more than just a backdrop for our existence. It offers us valuable lessons about adaptation, resilience, and constant change. When we come across the towering mountains of Table Mountain, or when we observe the wildlife in Kruger National Park, we are invited to feel a deep sense of gratitude, not only for the aesthetic beauty that these landscapes provide, but for the opportunity to learn from them. Stoicism teaches us to see beyond the surface, to understand that nature is not here to serve our desires or whims, but rather to teach us to live according to its laws. Every tree, every river, every animal that we cross along the way has an intrinsic wisdom that challenges us to be more aware and grateful for our own existence. Gratitude, in the Stoic context, leads us to a deeper awareness of our place in the world. Instead of focusing on the difficulties of everyday life, we are encouraged to look at nature and realize that although the world is imperfect and full of challenges, it is also full of wonder. This helps us cultivate a spirit of contentment, not because life is always easy, but because it is rich in experiences and lessons that, if well observed, can transform us. In South Africa, natural landscapes offer a perfect reflection of this wisdom. The arid desert can teach us about the importance of patience and perseverance, while dense forests can show us how tranquility and calm can be found even in the midst of chaos. Every corner of South African nature is a mirror that reflects Stoic principles, such as acceptance of what is natural and the understanding that we are not masters of the world, but rather part of it. True gratitude is not in waiting for nature to meet our needs, but in recognizing its greatness and feeling grateful for simply being part of this vast and wonderful cycle of life. Therefore, when we contemplate the natural beauty of South Africa, we can practice gratitude in a deeper and more conscious way. The practice is not just a superficial recognition, but an invitation to live in more harmony with the world around us. By aligning ourselves with the wisdom of nature, we can discover a path of inner peace that transcends everyday difficulties and connects us to something greater, to a universal order that teaches us day after day to live with dignity, humility, and respect. Seventh, Stoic resilience in the face of environmental challenges. Resilience is one of the most powerful virtues present in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics teach us that true strength lies not in the ability to avoid adversity, but in our ability to face it with calm, dignity, and wisdom. In South Africa, a country rich in biodiversity, but also subject to environmental challenges such as severe droughts, wildfires, and climate change, these lessons can be applied in profound and relevant ways. Nature offers us a series of lessons that the Stoics understood well: the impermanence of life cycles and the inevitability of change. When we look at the vastness of the Kruger National Park or the Savannah Fields, we can see that life follows an unchanging rhythm. The Stoics stated that nature does not ask questions, does not question itself, and simply goes its way. In the same way, we are invited to accept adversity as part of the life process, without despairing. The drought affecting the fields, the loss of fauna and flora in devastating fires, these are all part of a larger cycle that we cannot completely control, but we can control our reaction. Marcus Aurelius, for example, reminds us that it is not the event itself that causes us suffering, but our interpretation of it. When we face a relentless drought or see our local ecosystems at risk from fires, the Stoic response suggests that we should not give in to anger or despair. Instead, we must cultivate an adaptive mindset. It is important to realize that suffering is inevitable, but the way we deal with it defines our character and our ability to overcome obstacles. In South Africa, a country that frequently faces these environmental challenges, resilience is an even more essential virtue. Water scarcity, wildfires, and the impacts of climate change remind us of the vulnerability of life, but also of our ability to resist. The Stoic response is not to fight the storm, but to learn to navigate it with equanimity. It's like a river that, when it encounters an obstacle, doesn't rebel against it, but patiently goes around it until it finds a way. The concept of self-discipline is another key to Stoic resilience. We cannot control weather conditions, but we can control our actions when faced with them. A South African farmer, for example, faced with water scarcity, can adopt more sustainable farming practices, implementing efficient irrigation systems, or choosing crops that are more resistant to drought. Thus, even in the face of natural adversities, we can act in a practical and responsible way, promoting positive change and maintaining our serenity. True resilience also comes from acceptance. In Stoic philosophy, we are encouraged to distinguish between what is in our control and what is not. When facing environmental challenges, it is essential that we do not waste energy in fighting what is inevitable. Drought cannot be controlled by a single person, but the choices we make about how to respond to it, whether at an individual, community, or government level, are what shape the future. Acceptance here does not mean passivity, but a clear understanding of reality that allows us to act more effectively. Finally, it is important to recognize that just as nature renews itself after each cycle, our own strength can be renewed in the face of adversity. Every environmental challenge faced can be an opportunity to grow and learn, to become stronger and wiser, as the Stoics believed. The challenge of maintaining resilience in the face of South Africa's environmental difficulties is, therefore, an invitation to a fuller life, aligned with natural principles. In a world facing rapid change and unpredictable challenges, Stoic philosophy offers us a compass to navigate these difficulties. By applying these principles to our relationship with the environment, we can not only survive adversity, but also emerge from it stronger, more focused, and more aware of our responsibility to the earth. Thus, Stoic resilience becomes a fundamental virtue for building a more balanced and sustainable future. Eighth, caring for the earth with Stoic wisdom. The responsibility of the human being. Nature has always been one of the great sources of inspiration for Stoic philosophers. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus taught us to live in harmony with the world around us, understanding that our existence is not isolated but part of a greater whole. For the Stoics, true wisdom lies in living in accordance with the natural order, respecting and understanding the cycles that govern life. This worldview is especially relevant when we think about our responsibility towards the Earth, a planet that offers us everything we need to live, but that we sometimes forget to value. The relationship between human beings and nature is one of the oldest in history. Since ancient times, human beings have depended directly on natural resources for their survival. However, over time, humanity began to distance itself from Earth, prioritizing progress, industrialization, and unrestrained consumption. This resulted in irreparable damage to the planet's ecosystems, climate, and biodiversity. Stoic wisdom, in turn, teaches us to understand that we are part of a whole, and that by damaging the environment, we are harming not only the Earth, but also ourselves. The Stoics believed that everything in the universe was interconnected, governed by a universal reason, a natural order that was the basis of everything. To live virtuously, human beings should act in accordance with this order. This leads us to reflect on how we can live sustainably, respecting natural resources and preserving the balance of the planet. After all, how can we seek wisdom if we ignore the lessons that the Earth offers us daily? Every tree that grows, every river that flows, every animal that inhabits the planet teaches us something about resilience, balance, and harmony. Stoic wisdom reminds us that detachment is essential to a virtuous life. Human beings must learn to distinguish what is truly necessary for their survival and well-being from what is just an ephemeral desire. Rampant consumerism, which exploits natural resources without regard for future generations, goes against the Stoic principles of living in a simple and balanced way. Instead of clinging to what is material and fleeting, we must focus on what is essential and lasting, the preservation of the earth and respect for its natural laws. Practicing environmental care is not a matter of choice, but of responsibility. The Stoics believed that humans had an active role in preserving the natural order and that our actions should reflect this commitment. Caring for the earth is, therefore, a way of living according to Stoic principles, being responsible for the world we inhabit and for future generations. Every small action, such as reducing waste, recycling, planting trees, or adopting more sustainable habits, is a step towards this harmony with nature. Furthermore, the Stoics teach us that we must accept what is beyond our control, but also act wisely on what we can change. We can't control the weather or natural disasters, but we can choose how we respond to them. We can take action to mitigate the damage we cause to the environment and become more aware of how our choices affect the world around us. This is the true practice of Stoicism, living according to reason, with the understanding that our actions have consequences and that these consequences impact not only our lives, but the lives of all living beings and the planet as a whole. As we reflect on the human responsibility to care for the earth, we must remember that nature is not something to be conquered or subjugated, but something with which we must live in balance. Stoic wisdom teaches us that by respecting nature, we respect ourselves and our own dignity. There is no greater virtue than acting wisely, taking into account the well-being of the planet and all living beings that inhabit it. Care for the earth is, therefore, a natural extension of Stoic virtue, which seeks to live in harmony with the universe and the principles of universal reason. Ultimately, living according to Stoic wisdom leads us to understand that our relationship with the earth is a partnership. We must take care of her, just as she takes care of us, and always seek harmony and balance. By acting responsibly, sustainably, and consciously, we are not only fulfilling our ethical mission as human beings, but also cultivating the true inner peace that comes from living in accordance with nature. What the earth offers us must be treated with respect, love, and gratitude. For as the Stoics remind us, we are all interconnected, and our actions have the power to transform the world around us. If you feel like Stoic wisdom can transform the way you connect with nature and the world around you, subscribe now so you don't miss any of our next videos. Let's explore together how to live in harmony with the earth and apply these powerful teachings in our daily lives. And in the comments, tell us, which lesson from nature do you think can most change your life?